Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime and court in and around the state of Michigan. This week, after a body was found in the woods behind an apartment complex, investigators were led to an 18-year-old who may be the suspected killer. Plus, a Grand Rapids man learned his sentence after hitting and running over his wife with his car. I was in court for the hearing. All that and more is on the docket. It's not every day where we get an active murder investigation on the docket, one where the sheriff's department says they have a suspect in custody and the suspect is not yet charged with murder. That's what we have today. As of this taping, this case started in the evening of June 17th near York Creek Apartments in Alpine Township. The sheriff's office says a resident, that's the Kent County Sheriff's Office, says a resident found a 28-year-old Grand Rapids area man dead in the woods. After an autopsy, they say the man died from gunshot wounds and initially are calling the death suspicious. They took an 18-year-old from Grand Rapids in custody, the sheriff's office says, in connection to the incident. Sergeant Scott Dietrich with the Kent County Sheriff's Office says, "We understand that news like this can be alarming for residents in the area, and there's no threat to the public, and we encourage anyone with information, particularly security camera footage from the area, to contact the Kent County Sheriff's Office or Silent Observer." And a spokesperson for the apartment complex tells 13 on Your Side, "We understand from the Kent County Sheriff's Office that the matter didn't involve the apartment complex. The person just ended up in the land adjacent to the property." The 28-year-old is now identified as Mark Allen Blakely. And on June 15th, an 18-year-old was arrested and charged, but with carrying a concealed weapon in the area where the body was found. But here on the docket, we want to stress this 18-year-old was only arrested and charged with carrying a concealed weapon. He was arrested after a shots fired call to 911 on Father's Day, so June 15th. During his arraignment on June 17th, the judge indicated this case could be connected to a different crime. Santiago Barajas was arrested on June 15th after Kent County Sheriff's deputies responded to that call off of Alpenhorn Drive. According to probable cause documents, when deputies arrived on scene, witnesses were pointing to a man identified as Barajas, saying he had shot a gun. After a search, deputies found a concealed Glock handgun on him. And the documents go on to say Barajas told them he had been robbed during a Facebook Marketplace meetup trying to sell a watch. Barajas told deputies he fired that gun into the ground 2 times during that meeting. And it was found he does not have a concealed weapons permit and the gun was loaded, but rounds were missing from the magazine. And during his arraignment, his limited scope attorney, so the attorney who represents someone before they can get a public defender or hire their own attorney, said the court services report was based on charges she said they were not there to talk about during that arraignment. As of this taping, we do not know what those other charges are, and Barajas is only charged with the weapons offense. The limited scope attorney said, taking into account his employment history, lack of criminal record, and disregarding the charges in the court services report, she asked for a personal bond. But the judge disagreed, saying the gun could have been used in a bigger crime.
Ms. Epler, you're aware that while he is charged with carrying a concealed weapon only at this time, the allegations are that that concealed weapon that is attributed to Mr. Barajas may have been used in a homicide. Therefore, I don't believe a personal recognizance bond is appropriate. I understand, I don't believe it's appropriate to hold him no bond, given what his charges are at this time. But I don't believe a personal recognizance bond in any way is appropriate.
Barajas' limited scope representation disagreed, saying the weapons charge is a low-level felony. But the judge said the court has the discretion to consider the wider set of circumstances when setting bond.
Rather low-level felony.
Sure, I understand that. But the court has the discretion pursuant to MCR 6.106F to consider the broader context of the offense in and of itself. seriousness of the offense charged, the presence or absence of threats relating to, again, the broader context, and any other facts bearing on a risk of non-appearance or danger to the public. So pursuant to subparagraph F, I am setting bond in the amount of $100,000 cash or surety.
With all that said, we will continue to bring you updates as both of these cases progress. And earlier this week, as of this taping, a former Big B franchise owner and former Tulip Time board member was sentenced for a second time for upskirting charges, this time in another county. A few episodes ago, we told you about Mark Dykema, who was charged in Ottawa County with taking photos up women's skirts in public without their knowledge. He was sentenced in Ottawa County for those charges on May 19th, with another sentencing for charges stemming from that Ottawa County investigation in Kent County on June 18th. But let's take it back to the start. The Ottawa County Sheriff's Office says that incident happened back on August 19th. A woman in her 20s called dispatch to say she thought a man was trying to upskirt her or take a picture or video up her skirt. This is video we shot in 2022 of Mark Dykema on an unrelated story. The Sheriff's Office identified him as the suspect in question. He was charged in September 2024 in Ottawa County with capturing the image of an unclothed person and use of computer to commit a crime. Those Kent County charges came later in 2024. And back in May 2025, he was sentenced to about half a year in jail in Ottawa County in 3 different cases, each with one charge of surveilling women and using a computer to commit a crime. Dykema pleaded no contest to the charges, and one of his victims, who was 16 when she worked under him at Big B Coffee franchise in 2022, gave a victim impact statement before his sentencing. Again, this is in Ottawa County. She's now 19 years old and spoke about when she learned she was a victim in the case.
I began to question my self-worth and found myself replaying that moment over and over in my head, wondering if I missed signs or if there was something I could have done to prevent it, even though I know the responsibility lies solely with Mark. Not only did this crime impact the relationships in my life, but the ability to live my day-to-day life like I normally did in the past. I now find it more difficult to build trust-centered relationships. Is it better to know?
The prosecutor in the case saying they found hundreds of photos he had taken of women. He was sentenced to 180 days in jail with 35 days credit for the time he already had served. And while looking to his case in Ottawa County, we learned Dykema was also facing charges in Kent County for similar crimes. But while looking through the court documents, they allege he wasn't just committing these crimes against strangers. After being sentenced to 180 days in Ottawa County Jail for taking photos of women's skirts in Holland, former Big B franchise owner and board chair of Tulip Time, Mark Dykema, will be sentenced again, this time in Kent County, for similar crimes.
Immediately, I recognized what I convinced myself I was not doing at the time, the incredible harm that I had done.
Dykema was charged between October and December of last year of multiple counts of using a computer to commit a crime and surveilling an unclothed person. The Kent County charges stemmed from the Ottawa County investigation, along with what court documents claim was a 4-page emailed confession to an Ottawa County Sheriff's detective. Court documents say Dykema admitted he would take videos up women's baggy clothes for sexual gratification because he had a pornography addiction. Also in the court documents, Dykema told detectives he has applications on his devices that block pornography websites, and it sends a daily report to his wife for monitoring. He told detectives in the court docs he was creating porn since he could not access the websites, keeping the material in a cloud-based folder. One location where investigators found the alleged non-consensual videos was at Trader Joe's in Kentwood. Another at the church Dykema attended in Wyoming. One of his alleged victims is his wife's friend, with detectives saying Dykema took videos up her clothes while at church. They go on to say he also went into the friend's residence while she and her family were gone on vacation, accessing a photo album in a sock drawer with photos given to her husband on their wedding night, and Dykema taking pictures of those photos on his cell phone. Which then takes us to June 18th, 2025, where Dykema was sentenced for those Kent County charges. We heard emotional testimony from the victim and also some words from the judge and Dykema himself before he was sentenced. A former Big B franchise owner and board chair of Tulip Time will not spend additional time in jail for upskirting charges in Kent County.
This is a person who apparently violated some trust, but also a person who's got a lot of life ahead of him.
Mark Dykema is already serving 180 days for similar crimes out of Ottawa County. The Kent County charges, which stem from the Ottawa County investigation, allege Dykema would take photos and videos of women's skirts at his church, at Trader Joe's, and at a close family friend's house.
The things that he is charged with today only scratch the surface of the damage and pain he has caused my family and me.
One victim who spoke through a written statement read on her behalf was a lifelong friend of Dykema's wife. It's alleged in court documents Dykema went to her family's home while on vacation and photographed her personal intimate photos. But the victim says it was much more.
He admitted that he put cameras in our bathroom and bedroom, but this is not part of the evidence generated by the investigation. We will never know the answer, but I can't help but wonder if images of my husband and kids were also caught on these cameras.
She says he took her family's trust and sense of safety. While addressing the court, Dykema says his story is a warning.
That if any man finds himself in a position where he thinks, I have a small problem I can control, you're lying to yourself.
Judge Paul Denenfeld acknowledges the letters he's received, which he says show good sides of Dykema.
I think you've made some bad decisions, and I think you accept that. I think you've harmed a lot of people that you probably didn't intend to harm, but that was the result of your actions.
He gets over 60 days credit for time served on his 180-day jail sentence. So in Kent County, Dykema was given the same sentence as he was in Ottawa County to be served concurrently with similar time for time served. That means he will be getting out at roughly, if not the same time on both cases. You can read more about the sentencing, where we included the rest of the details of the 25-minute hearing that we couldn't include on air, on our website 13onyourside.com. Just search up former Big B minority owner receives a 180-day jail sentence in Kent, Ottawa County for surveilling women. And coming up next, after social media video of the arrest of two members of the Boston Square Neighborhood Association at the hands of GRPD went viral, both the men and GRPD Chief Eric Winstrom are speaking out to what each party believes the other did wrong. I'll break down both reactions next. On June 13th, videos of a confrontation in Grand Rapids' Boston Square neighborhood went viral. It showed community members involved in an arrest, with the Grand Rapids police chief standing behind his officers and community members saying it was an excessive use of force. Our Lauren Baker spoke with the two men arrested just before they filed a complaint with GRPD.
Even days after the incident,
they escalate, they incite, they antagonize.
Ned Andre says what happened in his neighborhood shouldn't have happened.
They come to our community, no crime is being committed, and yet they're holding our kids at gunpoint, and they're arresting community leaders like myself.
He's one of the men involved in the encounter in the Boston Square neighborhood on Friday with Grand Rapids police that went viral on social media. Police Chief Eric Winstrom told 13 on Your Side last week that police were flagged down along Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast to check out a group of men alleged to have an AR-15 style rifle and handgun. After the men were arrested, Winstrom says a group of men from the Boston Square Neighborhood Association inserted themselves and got arrested. Andre says GRPD didn't handle the situation correctly.
You know, when Chief Winstrom says we inserted ourselves in that situation, we live in Boston Square 24/7. They came into our environment. And we started off filming, and I'll tell you what, all our footage just shows mistake after mistake after tactical mistake.
Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack represented another man involved, and he says he agrees that GRPD needs to change how their officers respond.
We want to see police and community working together for better relations, but the police department cannot continue to claim the divine that whatever they do is within their policy and training, and we just have to take any type of verbal abuse, physical abuse.
The men refused to take our questions or go into detail about what the complaint will say, but did say they filed the complaint because they believe GRPD needs to be held accountable.
The police officers are not the judge, jury, and executioner on the streets of Grand Rapids.
The Grand Rapids Police Department is once again responding to the allegations after receiving more than 50 calls over the weekend between the Friday the 13th when the incident happened, and then when stuff started coming out the following Monday. Chief Eric Winstrom held a news conference late on June 16th. Winstrom is continuing to stand by his officers and their use of force, saying they told the group of people to move away from their investigation area 9 times. The chief released body camera footage during a press conference, and again, GRPD was investigating a different group about openly carrying a rifle. They were later released and free to go. The body camera footage we watched shows officers asking the group of people from the Boston Square Neighborhood Association to back away from the scene. It later shows officers arresting one of the men for disobeying orders, then a physical confrontation between officers and another man. Chief Winstrom said that an officer put his hands on the chest of a subject to get him to back up. Then you see that man strike his arm away. According to Winstrom, that's what escalated the situation.
When that officer put just his fingertips on that person, let him know this is a very serious situation. This is not a request. You will back up for the 9th time. And he hit that officer like that. Now he became an active aggressor. Obviously, that takes it to a higher level. What is going to be reasonably believed to be effective to address the situation at this time? That's why it escalated to a point where eventually that individual was tasered.
And like Winstrom said, an individual was tasered, and he told our Micah Cho supervisors will review the footage and then take appropriate actions. In a news release sent to the station, Winstrom said people have a right to observe and to film. They do not have the right to interfere with lawful police action. And a Grand Rapids man will spend several years in prison for killing his wife by running over her with his car. Melissa Casterman Madako died along the side of US 31 south of Manistee in September of 2023. I was in the courtroom for the emotional hearing. Family members of Melissa Casterman say justice was served after a judge sentenced Casterman's husband to at least 15 years in prison for hitting and killing her on the side of US 31.
Mark Lazon Casterman, you are a murderer. You killed my sister.
Mark Casterman pleaded no contest to second-degree murder in the September 2023 killing. The Mason County Sheriff's Office says Melissa Casterman was driving south on US 31 when she decided to pull over on the shoulder, get out of the car, and start walking after an argument. That's when deputies say Mark Casterman got behind the wheel, drove past Melissa twice before doing a final U-turn, accelerating and hitting his wife.
But I can indicate that this was not just an OUIL causing death, as was argued vigorously by the defense, and the plea was made for a plea to that charge. This was, in fact, a homicide.
Melissa Casterman's mother and sister both addressed Mark Casterman in court.
It's not going to bring my daughter back. You're a selfish individual, Mark. But it's okay. It's okay. All your choices. You are free to choose, but you are not free from the consequence.
Mark Casterman also tearfully addressed the court.
Say that I'm sorry that this happened, and I never ever intentionally tried to do none of this.
While the prosecutor says the plea meant justice served, the defense still believes this was an accident while operating under the influence of alcohol. The judge says while the sentencing puts an end to the legal process, it doesn't put an end to the suffering. She sentenced Mark Casterman to the guidelines of his plea deal. Although Melissa Casterman's sister told the judge it's a slap on the wrist, Mark Casterman will be spending 15 years minimum in prison. He'll be 75 at that time. The higher end of his guidelines is 5 decades, meaning he could spend the rest of his life locked up. Coming up next, after being left with her girlfriend's 4.5-month-old baby, a woman learned her sentence after that same baby died from severe injuries sustained while in her care. Coming up, what happened both that day and in her sentencing. In late July of 2024, a 4.5-month-old baby was taken off life support after she suffered life-threatening injuries. Families say Renzi McCall was a vibrant baby whose life the court says was taken by her mother's girlfriend, Savannah Miller. Miller was sentenced on June 20th, almost a year after Renzi's death. She pleaded no contest to second-degree child abuse and second-degree murder, with charges for first-degree child abuse and first-degree murder dropped. But before we get into the sentencing, let's take it back to 2024. What was supposed to be a normal night with a babysitter ended in tragedy for Jeremiah White's 4-month-old granddaughter, Renzi. He got a frantic phone call from his daughter, Amber.
He said, I got a glimpse of Renzi and I thought I saw something on her, like bruises or something. She turned on the light and she was fully covered in bruises.
Amber arrived home early in the morning to find her daughter in the bed just feet from where her partner, Savannah Miller, slept.
And she's like, she's not okay. So my daughter picked her up and she's like, Dad, she's lifeless, like she's barely breathing.
Amber trusted Miller to care for her baby while she worked.
When we realized that Renzi will never be the same.
After being airlifted to DeVos Children's, doctors discovered swelling in Renzi's brain, leading to emergency brain surgery.
And then I knew from my daughter that she was assaulted by Savannah. I think the struggle for my daughter is why, and like what or why.
White says Amber had conversations with her partner of 4 months, telling her that if caring for Renzi was ever too much for her, she could find other care.
You abused a 4.5-month-old child and left her lifeless as you laid in the bed, another bed next to her. How we recover from that, I don't know.
But just days after that Sunday evening, Renzi passed away after extensive invasive surgeries to save her life.
I was going to be with my grandbaby and my daughter and my wife and my other daughter for the weekend, and now that one of those plus ones is missing.
White doesn't know what will happen next, but says he needs to support his daughter.
And that we rally around her and let her know that you did nothing wrong, and that whatever we have to do to support you, that's what we're going to do.
We also talked with Miller's sister, who says her sister deserves life in prison.
She's narcissistic, she is conniving, and she is evil. We're all hoping that she gets the maximum sentence allowed for every single one of her charges.
On Monday, 31-year-old Savannah Miller was arraigned on 1 count of child abuse. She was accused of causing major injuries to 4.5-month-old Renzi McCall on July 21st. Renzi's grandfather, Jeremiah White, says he got a frantic call after his daughter Amber came home from work.
She said, I came in, she was in bed, and she said, I got a glimpse of Renzi and I thought I saw something on her, like bruises or something. She turned on the light and she was fully covered in bruises.
The baby's mother was in a relationship living with Miller, who is now facing murder charges after baby Renzi was taken off life support Wednesday evening. Police and Renzi's family say the baby's mother found her 4.5-month-old daughter on a bed with many bruises, barely alive.
So my daughter picked her up and she's like, Dad, she's lifeless, like she's barely breathing.
Miller's sister, Desiree Gilbert, says her sister was in rehab for the last few months for alcohol addiction and has a history of abuse.
She abused me severely. She has a history of abusing her own 3 sons and other children from other relationships. She has over 100 CPS cases or reports that were filed.
Gilbert hopes her sister gets the maximum amount of time behind bars. She also wants Renzi's family to know that she will fight for justice to be served for their little girl.
I just want to give my sincerest apologies that this never should have happened, and that I will be seeking justice for Renzi as well as my other sisters, and we will get as far as we possibly can.
We looked into the court docs, which detail what happened the night Renzi was fatally injured. Savannah Miller said the entire night she was watching 4-month-old Renzi McCall is blurry, according to court documents obtained by 13 on Your Side. She doesn't remember it chronologically, but Miller told the Reed City Police Department that Renzi's injuries were attributed to 4 accidents: falling off a tall bed twice, hitting Renzi's head on a sharp edge in the hallway while walking with her, and Renzi falling off a countertop while Miller made eggs. But Miller's sister says that Renzi's injuries were no accident.
She's saying that, the injuries that were caused to baby Renzi were accidental, which doesn't add up.
Desiree Gilbert cut off her sister 4 years ago after she says she hit her son and hasn't seen her in 2 years.
I was pregnant with my 4th son, and she got irate and got up into my face and threatened to beat me and kill my baby inside of me.
The night that Miller watched Renzi, documents reveal she DoorDashed 10 Fireball shooters, finishing at least 8 of them days after celebrating 4 months sober. Officials say Miller was going to call 911, but knew she was intoxicated and would probably get in trouble. She admitted to officials that she was home alone with the baby. She was the one who chose to drink the alcohol, and she was the one that is responsible for Renzi's injuries, unintentionally. Which brings us to June 20th, 2025, when Miller faced a judge to learn her sentence.
My name is Amber McCall. Sorry. Never in a million years did I ever foresee myself being in a courtroom, having to express my deepest feelings to a judge, and to such an evil, selfish, jealous person who killed the love of my entire life. I never pictured this being my reality, my family's reality, or Renzi's reality. The pain we are living with is something I never thought we would have to endure. I'm sorry.
It's all right, take your time.
How can you be so evil and selfish to take the life of a precious 4-month-old child? Thank you. How can you claim to have loved her so much when your actions past and present reflect nothing but selfishness and disregard for her well-being? And it's still now you have yet to take responsibility for what you did to my daughter. How can you look at yourself in the mirror every day knowing that you took her life so senselessly with your bare hands? How could you make the conscious decision not only to ultimately not call 911 to get her help she desperately needed, but to also hear her screams and cries, and then take her clothes off before placing her back into her bassinet as if nothing was wrong? How do you live with the knowledge that in those final moments you made the decision to do nothing, to ignore her suffering and her cries for help? It's so hard for me to not have the utmost hate in my heart for what you did to my daughter. The pain and anger I feel is so overwhelming. My heart aches every day because of what you took from me, from my family, and from Renzi. You robbed Renzi of her life. You robbed me, my family, and my friends of the opportunity to meet her, to love her, to watch her grow up, to experience the joy she would have brought to all of us. We will never have the opportunity to experience this with Renzi. Now all we have left of Renzi are countless thoughts of what it would have been like if she were still here with us today. What she would have looked like by now. What she would be doing. These thoughts haunt me every day. Instead of seeing her grow, laugh, and become the person she was meant to be, all we have are pictures and videos. Memories frozen in time. Those pictures and videos will never be enough. They can never replace the real moments, the experiences, the milestones we would have shared with her. I will always be heartbroken for the rest of my life. The pain and anguish you've caused me are indescribable. I am left with emptiness that I fear will never go away. You are a tumor in my life. I do hate you. I can't put into words. I can't put into words the depth of hatred I feel for you, for what you did to my baby, for what you did to me, to my family, to my friends. You didn't deserve us. You didn't deserve to be a part of our lives. I actually hate that I crossed paths with you, that you were ever allowed into my world and in Renzi's world. The impact you have on all of us is unforgivable. You do not deserve to walk free ever again. You are a monster. You chose yourself instead of my daughter. And she's all that I care about. And I hope that what you did to her haunts you every day. That's all. I'm sorry. Yeah.
My client, Ms. Miller, has accepted responsibility since day one. This case has been going on for quite a while. But, you know, as I know you are aware, you know, there are certain things that I need to do in order to be able to protect her rights and that sort of thing. So she wanted to go ahead and plead guilty immediately. So it was against my advice, but she's always wanted to accept responsibility. She always has with me in our private conversations. She's devastated by this as well. You know, she's not the victim. Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of victims here. She obviously made some poor choices. She shouldn't have ingested the alcohol. I mean, I think that's how, you know, we got here. Obviously, she's had addiction problems her entire adult life. But she's always accepted responsibility. She told multiple stories initially, as Mr. Banovic had indicated, but she did come clean, and she cooperated with law enforcement. She walked them around the apartment. I mean, there's body cam video where she walked them around and explained to them what happened, and the best of her recollection. So this is always something, you know, that she's been willing to accept responsibility for. And the guidelines here, Judge, are 100 and, I believe 100 and, what is it, 100 and, sorry, Judge. 180 to 300. I think that's like 18 3/4 to 25 years. My request, Judge, was that you sentence her within the guideline range, maybe even at the high end, and allow the parole board to go ahead and assess her situation after that period of time, because they're the ones who are going to be in a better position to determine how she is going to, or how she does while she's incarcerated. So I would ask you to take that into consideration and sentence her within the sentencing guidelines.
Ms. Miller, what would you like me to know before I proceed with sentence?
There's no amount of words that will ever begin to explain how much I hate myself for allowing my addiction to become my life to become unmanageable because my addiction. I will spend the rest of my life unable to forgive myself for the mistakes I've made and the pain and heartache I have caused to Amber and her family. It's been well over 300 days, and it still hasn't gotten easier for me to be able to cope with what I've done. I can now only pray that one day Amber and her family will find it in their hearts to forgive me one day. There's not enough I'm sorry's in the world that will bring her back, and if there was, I would say every one of them. From the bottom of my heart, I am sincerely, remorsefully sorry.
First, I'm going to deal with the child abuse charge. Your sentence is going to be as follows. 80 months to 10 years, credit for 335 days already served on the second degree homicide or murder charge. The court has actually struggled a bit because of the fact that your guidelines, the top of your guidelines are only 25 years, and that's just not sufficient under the circumstances. So this court is going to go above the guidelines in this case, and I'm going to state for the record why I am doing that. There are a number of reasons. First, when scoring out the guidelines in this case, the grid tops out when you're looking at her offense variables. The offense variables in this case top out at 75 points.
Judge, I think that would be PRVs.
No, for OVs. OVs.
Okay.
Not her PRV. She doesn't have PRVs. I mean, her PRVs are low. That's her prior record. Her PRVs are low.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Her PRVs are only 12. Her OVs are 125. They top out the highest guideline grid in that case with 12 PRVs is 75 plus, and so she has 125. So she's got 50 more points, almost double the amount of points over and above what the grid even takes into consideration. So this court has taken into consideration that if the grid could go higher than 75, her sentence would go up from that point because she has 50 more points than what the grid even accommodates. I will also note that is what is disturbing to this court, and I think that it should be disturbing to anyone who actually looks at this case, is the fact that she had, and I want to get to the right page. She has an extensive CPS history. She has had, according to the report, over 100 Child Protective Services reports of abuse and neglect in a 4-year period. And then the report goes on to list all of the things that CPS, all of the reasons that CPS were called to her home. So there is a history of abuse and neglect with this defendant, and some of those incidences also involve harm to her children, her own children, not this child, her own children. Alcohol, drugs and alcohol, because part of it says methamphetamines, prescription pills, and alcohol, while caring for her own children. Then I am also going to indicate that the report does list, as pointed out. Well, let me back up for just a minute, because what I want to make sure is clear on the record, what is extremely bothersome to me, is that the report indicates that even after all of those allegations, all of those incidences, Mrs. Miller's children were not removed from her care until this offense actually occurred. So that is just something that is almost beyond belief to this court, that the CPS was not removing her own children for behavior like this with her children, and then it rises to the level of now we have a 4-month-old child who has been or is dead based on neglect or abuse from the defendant that stands before me today. I will also note that it indicates that she had, her longest period of sobriety was 291 days. She's been consuming alcohol since she was 16 years old. As the prosecutor indicated, the amount of injuries that are listed starting on page 9 are substantial to this child. And I will also note that basically she was incoherent when the mother of this child came home and found this baby that was not given medical care early enough to save this child's life, if it could have. Nobody knows for sure what happened, but there is always the question, what would have happened if this child would have gotten medical care on an earlier basis. But this defendant that stands before me has or was not in any sort of shape based on drugs and or alcohol to provide the care that was necessary. So the recommendation in this case is for 40 years to 80 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. I am going to go along with that. I think the deviation from the guidelines is reasonable and appropriate, taking into account everything that the guidelines do not. Credit for 335 days, that runs concurrent with the sentence that I have just imposed for the child abuse charge.
Thanks for joining me in this episode of On the Docket on 13 Plus. We have new episodes releasing every week, taking you into the courtroom for the latest updates and deep dives on crime in and around West Michigan. In the meantime, we will bring you the latest on crime in court, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. And when breaking news affects you and your community, we stream live on 13 Plus with what you need to know right when you need to know. We'll see you next time with updates on what's on the docket.